You know what's wild? I was talking to a friend last week who makes $180,000 a year, and he told me he feels broke. And then yesterday, I spoke with someone making $45,000 who told me they've never felt more financially secure in their life. And here's the thing, both of them are telling the truth because we've been sold this massive lie about what financial freedom actually means, and it's costing people decades of their lives. My name's Thomas, and I spend way too much time thinking about why people who make good money still feel trapped by it. If you're someone who's ever thought, I just need to make a little bit more and then I'll finally feel financially secure, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. We need to talk about something that nobody wants to admit. According to a 2023 survey by payroll.org, 78% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. But here's where it gets really interesting. That includes 36% of people making over $100,000 a year. Let that sink in for a second. More than 1 in 3 six-figure earners are one bad month away from financial crisis. So clearly, being rich, or at least making what most people would consider a lot of money, isn't solving the problem, which means we're fundamentally misunderstanding what financial freedom actually is. Here's what most people don't realize. Financial freedom has nothing to do with how much money you make. It has everything to do with the gap between your income and your expenses, and more importantly, your relationship with that gap. Let me show you what I mean with some actual math. Person A makes $200,000 a year. After taxes, they're taking home about $140,000. They've got a $4,500 mortgage, 2 car payments totaling $1,200, private school tuition at $2,500 a month, and lifestyle expenses that run another $4,800. That's $13,000 a month in fixed obligations. They're maybe saving $1,500 a month if they're lucky. Now, person B makes $65,000 each. Take home is around $50,000. They rent a modest place for $1,400. They bought a used car in cash, no payment. Their lifestyle expenses are about $2,000 a month, and they're saving $1,000 a month. Here's the thing. Person B is more financially free than person A, even though they make less than a third of the income. Why? Because person A needs every single dollar of that $200,000 to maintain their life. They're trapped by their own lifestyle. Person B could lose their job and survive for months. Person A would be in crisis within 60 days. Financial freedom isn't about being rich, it's about having options. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Thomas, but if I made $200,000, I wouldn't spend it all. I'd save most of it. And look, I believe that you believe that. But the data tells a very different story. There's this concept in psychology called the hedonic treadmill, or lifestyle creep, as it's known in personal finance. Harvard Business Review published research showing that for every dollar increase in income, the average American increases their spending by 90 cents. 90 cents! Here's what actually happens. You get a promotion, you're making $20,000 more a year, you think, finally, I can get ahead. But then you start thinking, I can afford a nicer apartment. I've been driving this old car for 5 years. I deserve an upgrade. And we should really take that vacation we've been putting off. And suddenly, 6 months later, your bank account looks exactly the same as it did before the raise. Except now you've got higher fixed costs, which means you're actually less financially secure than you were before the raise. This is why you see so many high-income earners who feel broke. They're not broke, they're trapped. The real definition of financial freedom. And this is going to change how you think about money. Financial freedom is when your passive income and savings can cover your expenses without you having to trade your time for money. Notice what's not in that definition. There's no dollar amount. There's no income threshold because it's not about the total, it's about the ratio. A person with $500,000 invested who spends $20,000 a year is more financially free than someone with $3 million invested who spends $150,000 a year. The first person could live off a 4% withdrawal rate indefinitely. The second person is burning through their money and will eventually run out. The math that changes everything. This is where it gets really interesting, and I want you to really pay attention to this because it's genuinely life-changing once you understand it. Let's say you want to be financially free, meaning you want enough invested that you could stop working if you wanted to. The standard rule is you need about 25 times your annual expenses invested. That's That's based on the 4% rule, which is pretty conservative. If you spend $80,000 a year, you need $2 million. That sounds impossible, right? But watch what happens when we flip this around. If you can get your annual expenses down to $40,000, you only need $1 million. You just cut your target in half, not by making more money, but by spending less. If you can get it down to $30,000 a year, you need $750,000. That's not some crazy unattainable number. That's achievable for most people who are strategic about it. Here's the thing that blows my mind. If you make $100,000 and spend $90,000, you're saving 10%, and you need to save for decades to hit freedom. But if you make $60,000 and spend $30,000, you're saving 50% of your income. You'll hit financial freedom in less than half the time, even though you make less money. The psychology of enough. Now look, I know what some of you are thinking. Thomas, I don't want to live like I'm broke just to retire early. And that's completely valid. But here's where we need to talk about something uncomfortable. Most of what we spend money on doesn't actually make us happier. Princeton University did this famous study. They found that happiness increases with income up to about $75,000 a year, and then it basically flatlined. More recent data from the Wharton School adjusted that to around $85,000 to $95,000 when you account for inflation. But the point stands. After a certain point, more money doesn't equal more happiness. So why do we keep chasing more? Because we're comparing ourselves to other people instead of asking ourselves what we actually need to be content. Your coworker buys a BMW, so suddenly your perfectly good Honda feels inadequate. Your neighbor renovates their kitchen, and now your kitchen feels outdated. We're stuck in this endless cycle of comparison and consumption, and it's destroying our ability to ever feel like we have enough. Here's what most people don't realize. The person who figures out what enough means to them personally, not based on what society says, not based on what their friends have, but based on what actually makes them happy, that person wins the game. The opportunity cost nobody talks about. Here's something that frustrates me that nobody talks about. Every dollar you spend is a dollar that can't work for you. Let's do some quick math. You're deciding whether to upgrade from a $30,000 car to a $50,000 car. That's a $20,000 difference. But it's not really $20,000, is it? If you invested that $20,000 instead at a conservative 8% annual return, in 30 years, that's $201,000. That's not a $20,000 decision, that's a $200,000 decision. Or let's say you're deciding between a $2,500 apartment and a $3,200 apartment. That's $700 a month or $8,400 a year. Doesn't sound like that much, right? But invested over 30 years, that's $1.03 million. Every spending decision is actually a freedom decision. You're choosing between the thing now and freedom later. And most people are unconsciously choosing the thing every single time and then wondering why they feel trapped. The action steps. Okay, so what do you actually do with this information? Because understanding the concept doesn't help if you don't change your behavior. First, calculate your actual financial freedom number. Take your current annual spending and multiply it by 25. That's your target. Now, be honest. How much of that spending actually makes you happy? Circle back to that Princeton research. Are you spending way more than $85-95K without any meaningful increase in life satisfaction? Second, track every dollar for 1 month. And I mean every dollar. You cannot optimize what you don't measure. Most people have no idea where their money actually goes. There's this great line. If you don't tell your money where to go, you'll wonder where it went. Third, identify your freedom expenses versus your prison expenses. Freedom expenses are things that genuinely improve your quality of life. Prison expenses are things you're spending on because of social pressure, comparison, or habit. The prison expenses are what's keeping you trapped. Fourth, and this is crucial, automate your savings before you can spend the money. The people who successfully build wealth don't have better willpower, they have better systems. Set up automatic transfers the day after you get paid. Pay yourself first, always. The perspective shift. Look, here's the thing I wish someone had told me 10 years ago. You're not going to stumble into financial freedom by accident. The system is literally designed to keep you consuming. Every advertisement, every social media post, every "you deserve it" message is engineered to separate you from your money. Financial freedom is a rebellion. It's choosing to opt out of the endless consumption cycle. And the beautiful part? It gets easier the longer you do it. The first month you spent less feels like deprivation. The 6th month feels like being smart. The The second year feels like freedom, and 5 years in, you genuinely can't imagine going back to the way you used to live because you've tasted what real freedom feels like. So let me bring this full circle. Financial freedom isn't about being rich. It's about designing a life where your money serves you instead of you serving your money. It's about having the option to say no to things that don't align with your values. It's about waking up and not having to check your bank account with anxiety. The person making $200,000 but spending $195,000 isn't free. They're trapped in a golden cage. The person making $55,000 but only needing $30,000 to be happy, that person has already won. Calculate your freedom number. Then ask yourself honestly, what would I have to give up to get there? And more importantly, what would I gain? If this shifted your perspective on money at all, hit that like button. Subscribe if you want more content on building wealth without sacrificing your entire life to do it. Drop a comment and let me know what your biggest obstacle to financial freedom is. I read every single one. Remember, you don't need to be rich to be free. You just need to be intentional. I'll see you in the next one.